Hello, my name is Johannes Mutzke, and you're finding this entry hopefully on my blog, Blue Ink. And on Blue Ink, what I like to do is focus on expanding potential, envisioning purpose, and executing with passion. So those are sort of the broad categories that I focus on. I've been writing for a while, and I thought today was another time to connect with you on video. It's a little bit easier and allows me to play with some pictures a little bit more and just connect maybe more directly than through writing. So what I want to focus on today is the topic of micromanagement. And you might think micromanagement, boy, that is a weird topic for Johannes to be focusing on. He likes to talk about vision, he likes to talk about strategy, here's something nuts and bolts on management. And first of all, let me just make the point that micromanagement and management in general is not necessarily something only for corporations, only for businesses, but think of managing your personal life, your relationship with people. We all, and I'm convinced of this, all have a personal leadership role beyond our jobs. And a lot of these principles can be used whether you're working in a religious institution, organization, even in your own family. So it boils down to leadership and how we organize ourselves. So first of all, what is micromanagement? And then I'll make the connect to the bigger picture that I like to focus on if you've been following at all what I've been writing and paying attention to. So micromanagement is managing at a level of detail that you've actually delegated to someone else. So managing below your level. Now, that's a very important definition because that level of detail can vary, and I'll talk about that maybe a little bit later in another update or in a blog post sometime. But for now, let's use that definition, managing at a level of detail that you've actually delegated to someone else. Now, there's a lot that's been written about how that's demotivating to people, you don't get as much out of them, all of that. I want to focus, though, I think, on what is the bigger tragedy of micromanagement. So my point was just now, I've put three levels of responsibility, and what my point was just a minute ago was to say, a lot's been written on what happens to these people down here when one level micromanages another level. So when one level is doing something here, what happens? And I believe in all those things. Those things are critical. Those things are problems. They need to be dealt with. I think there's, as I said, a much bigger tragedy involved here. Let me just illustrate with a simple picture. What happens when one level micromanages another? And let's start at the top. Let's say the top level, the level that's supposed to be doing strategy work, leadership of the organization, leadership of the family, whatever, sinks down to this level. What happens? Well, that means that this level, because they're modeling the level above them and because they have to find enough work to do, sinks down to this level. And this level either can't go any lower or stays in the same place and stays here. So I've drawn little boxes here behind each of the levels. Okay, so this level, let me just put this one a little lower, is now here. Everyone's gone down a level. Which box is exposed? It's the top box. And that's the real tragedy here. The real tragedy is not necessarily that all these bad things are happening there, although those are all things that need to be addressed and creates terrible morale and all of that. The real tragedy, though, is that the strategic work in the organization is not getting done. Who's looking out for the vision? Who's looking out for a year or 2 years from now? Who's formulating the key big things that have to change and be addressed? All of that is abdicated and left open. That is a huge problem with a lot of organizations and companies that I see, is they are so operationally driven and people gravitate towards activity and doing things and so on, that really the future is left completely to chance and exposed. And often, it's pay me now or pay me later. This will catch up to you later down the road when there is no clear vision, when things don't happen, when the previous generation of visionaries have left and you're running on that vision, but you get to the end of that and there is no vision to follow up on that. So why does that happen? Why does this tragedy happen? I think there's two reasons. I think first of all, and they're both related. A lot of people come up through the organizations, 3, 2, 1, and are more comfortable at the lower levels of management and like operations. They really think that's where the activity is. They've always been rewarded for that. And that's another problem we'd have to deal with separately at another point, is the only way to get up here is typically through operations, where you're always rewarded for activity and action and so on. And people don't know how to do the strategic visionary work. We have a lack of competency and skills at this level. I think another reason is, it's also people don't see this as work. What do? You don't see the implications of what you're working on today or tomorrow or even for a year. So personally, unless you see that as real work and as a job to be done and as a mission, it can be very unsatisfying if you don't understand really the content of the work. And if you can't explain it to other people, people don't believe you that you're really doing anything. What's your output for today? What have you done? A lot of that needs to be explained to people. We need to show them the sort of the interim steps that it takes to get to a strategy, engage them in that process. And it's not rewarded. This level of activity, the good level of activity, is very difficult to reward because a lot of times it's over the very long term. So I think those are really the 3 reasons. People come up through operations and lack the skill set. Secondly, they don't see it as work. And thirdly, it's not rewarded. Here's a question for you. What level are you operating at? And in some area of your life, whether it's leading your family and your organization or leadership, you have big decisions, long-term things you need to be focusing on. Are you doing that? Or are you more comfortable sinking down into the action and day-to-day level, and you're leaving yourself exposed, and you'll pay the price for that? That's the real tragedy of micromanagement. Sound off, give me feedback. I'd be interested to hear what you think about all of this.